Those are more of placeholders. What we'll do is survey the board to make sure that we can get a lot of board members on those dates when we get closer to those events. So those are more of placeholders. And with that, I would hope to have the board's approval for our meeting calendar for calendar year 2025.
Questions, comments? Greg, I just wanted to just run something by the committee here. So right now we have commitments every other month, obviously, for our board meetings. And I noticed that the way you scheduled these was in intervening months. Mm-hmm. And this is just a philosophical, I suppose, question for the other members, which is what this does is means that we have meetings scheduled potentially all but 2 months out of the year. And I'm wondering, in your view, would it be preferable to have these meetings closer to the other meetings so that we have full months off, 6 full months off, or to have these essentially so that there's some sort of a meeting almost every month of the year?
I think everybody's going to be different. And personally, for me, my schedule varies so much that I think it's good the way it is. And getting an idea of how many people can attend as it gets closer is going to be the information that's useful.
So for me, it's never a good time. These are total inconveniences all the time. And it's part of what we do as board members. We make time. So, the new social ones, maybe having those on Fridays, on Friday board meeting days, so that we've already come downtown and but that's something we can change. Those are flexible dates and whatever. So I honestly don't know. I think it totally varies by person and also by life is just not a straight line. It's always messy, so.
Thanks. I'll probably bring this up again tomorrow and just see what the larger board thinks of it. But yeah, I like that idea of just doing it on Friday after the board meeting's over, if that's possible. But okay, is there a motion? I guess there's already a motion and a second, right? So please vote.
With all votes in, Mr. Acting Chair, this motion passes 3-0.
Thanks. Next are a couple of items that Michelle's bringing to us. First one is staff's recommendation to select Dell as our Microsoft Enterprise licensing vendor. Michelle.
Good morning. Our current 3-year contract for our Microsoft Enterprise agreement is coming up for renewal in October. This is a comprehensive licensing agreement that covers all of SDCERS Microsoft products, including desktop server operating systems, databases, Exchange, and Office. This renewal gave us an opportunity to evaluate our current licensing structure and make changes to better align to our technical roadmap. We worked with our licensed service provider, Dell, to determine the best licensing to support our current and future needs. After much analysis and internal discussions, we recommend to renew our licensing and move into Microsoft 365, as well as purchase the additional security and compliance suite. Moving to Microsoft 365 with the added security and compliance suite has advantages such as ease of software updates, Exchange 365, and many other tools that both end users and technical staff can take advantage of. Based on our purchasing guidelines and the value of the agreement, the IT team went through a competitive process and published a request for quote, submitted that to all the pre-authorized licensed service providers, also called LSPs. We ultimately received 5 replies to our RFQ. All quotes were very similar price, so we used the knowledge and reputation of the vendors to make the final decision, and we recommend to proceed with Dell as our Microsoft LSP. Dell is our current LSP for our Microsoft agreement, and we have been very happy with their services and their expertise in this area. Looking at the cost of this agreement is not to exceed $325,000 across 3 years, which is a large increase from our last renewal in 2021. What accounts for this increase are a couple of things. Annual software license increases have been increasing across the board for a lot of our licensing, between 10 and 20% in the last year we've been seeing. So if you break out the cost of this agreement and you look for like services, this is an increase of 19% from 2021. Also, across the next few years, you will likely, with the purchase of the Security and Compliance Suite, you'll likely see some savings in our licensing where we can replace some of our current solutions with solutions that are coming with this Microsoft Suite. Secondly, last year we piloted the Microsoft solution for a security event and incident management system. This went from pilot into being the selected solution. That is a cloud-based product that comes with its additional subscription. That's included in this agreement as well. And that accounts for 31% of this agreement. Lastly, because there's 2 products going into cloud, the SIEM and Exchange, we're estimating what the cloud storage we're going to need. So there is some contingency built into the cost of the agreement to cover any additional cloud storage that's needed beyond what's included in the Microsoft 365 licensing. So in summary, we think moving into the Microsoft 365 world is going to give the best value to SDCERS for our current and future needs. And before I conclude, I wanted to recognize Sean for his work on this project. He has a vast knowledge in contracting and has a great relationship with the vendors and was able to put together what he believes and what we support as a good strategy going forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So just out of curiosity, do we also buy the hardware from Dell? Does Microsoft not license directly? Do they only go through other third parties, vendors? Is that how it just works that way?
It is that way. So Microsoft will not, for enterprise agreements, they won't license direct to government agencies. So we have to go through a licensed service provider, the LSPs.
Okay.
Our request for quote went off of the Riverside County agreement. So Riverside negotiated preferred rates with Microsoft. So when we put our request for a quote out, we asked vendors to bid off of that. The LSP list is a list of 8, I believe, qualified vendors that are out there. And of that, we had 5 respond of the 8 that are on that list.
Do we do hardware through Dell also? Like, is it
Dell does.
kind of efficiencies from software and?
You're jumping to my next action item. We do have Dell equipment. We will be migrating off of some Dell equipment. They have multiple solutions, right? They work as an LSP for licensing, but they also have hardware solutions. So we are not technically a Dell shop, but
Okay.
This is completely separate from hardware purchasing.
Paul? Anything? Great to see us moving to 365. Thanks, Sean, for doing the work. Appreciate it. Need a motion and a second, please. And please vote.
With all votes in, Mr. Acting Chair, this motion passes 3-0.
Thanks. And next is Michelle's recommendation to approve an agreement with Nth Generation. I was going to say Dell, but apparently not. Nth Generation for the replacement of our storage area network solution.
Thank you. So SDCERS data is hosted on-premise, utilizing storage area network system, also referred to as a SAN. A SAN is a sophisticated network of storage devices that's accessed by multiple services to provide shared resources and storage. Our existing SAN was put into place in 2012 with the expectation that it would last 5 years before needing to be replaced. We've now reached, in 2020, the board approved the purchase of additional storage that extended the life of our existing storage, or existing SAN. We've now reached the point of our SAN no longer being supported after April 2025, and the manufacturer, Dell, is no longer going to provide updates, security updates for that hardware. Needless to say, since 2012, we've gotten more than our money's worth from our existing SAN, but it's time to replace it. We've worked with our current vendor, Nth Generation, to analyze current usage and data growth to determine the capacity of our unit and what hardware options exist out there. With the results of the analysis, Sean and team determined the best SAN solution to meet SDCERS need and proceeded with a request for quote. We received 4 responses from qualified vendors, and after thorough review and submission, staff recommends we proceed with Nth for the purchase of an HP SAN. We've been working with Nth for several years as a valued technical partner and very happy with their services and expertise. They were also able to provide a quote and pricing that was 70% less than the next closest bid. The proposed configuration is expected to support SDCERS for the next 7 to 10 years with the flexibility to expand storage if needed. Again, I want to thank Sean for his effort in coordinating the vendors and determining the best technical configuration. So in summary, staff recommends that the board approve the agreement with Nth for the new storage area network not to exceed $160,000.
Comments? I just want to say the memo you put together on this was fantastic. It was thorough without being too much information, answered all my questions. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Need a motion and a second, please. Any other comments? Please vote.
With all votes in, Mr. Acting Chair, this motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Michelle. Johnny's up next. Staff recommendation to direct the CEO to retain Noonan, Lance Boyer, and I'm going to say, what?
Bannock.
Bannock LLP as litigation counsel for up to 5 years. Johnny.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Dave Noonan and his firm has represented SDCERS in its litigation since 2010. Each new case that arises, I bring before the board, and the board has voted to have Mr. Noonan represent us. His current rates are expiring, and so as a best practice, we wanted to bring this to the board's attention. Just as a general practice, if we have one litigator hired to litigate the case, I generally like to keep that litigator through the entire case. Otherwise, we risk losing a lot of information, and that practice is consistent with my recommendation, staff's recommendation, to continue to retain Noonan Lance to represent us. He is a great litigator. Without a doubt, I've been to trial with him twice through the PSC litigation, through litigation for correction of benefits, through multiple appellate court matters, and I continue to have the utmost respect and confidence in him. I know a lot of you haven't met Mr. Noonan. That's because things have been so good. We haven't felt it's necessary to bring him to the board, but I would like you to meet him, and I expect to have him here in November to brief you on our current litigation. But before you, just a recommendation from staff to retain the firm, to allow Greg as CEO to negotiate those terms for at least the next 5 years for these cases to see their way through. The increase in rates is very nominal, I think. If you, Brett, you may be familiar with litigation or counsel's rates, but $495 an hour for someone who's been practicing longer than I've been alive is amazing. And his partner rates and associates rates are significantly reasonable relative to our market and their skill level. So with that, I would like any questions? Otherwise, a motion and a second, please.
Questions? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Just, do we not normally do RFPs on this kind of thing?
It's a good question. The way Dave Noonan was selected in 2010 was through a request for information, and that's because we're a unique entity. What we're looking for is defense experience with defending public entities, which isn't every attorney's skill set. So I would say it is not normal just to do an open RFP, but instead to select from well-known litigators in San Diego who would help represent us and what we do with the experience and skill set that we need.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you. Johnny, it uses the word retainer.
Yeah.
Could you kind of explain, are we paying the firm like an annual sum and then that type of thing? Or how
a good
how does the
question.
relationship work with the board?
Thank you. I've never liked that word because it means two different things. So sometimes law firms are given an amount of money just in the start to say, hey, in case we need you, you work for us. We don't do that. We pay them hourly for the services that they give. And so the expectation here is just to retain or hire or work with this law firm for up to 5 years. Does that answer your question?
Sure, and just to clarify, should we have future litigation, Johnny would talk to the board in either open or closed session, depending on what the matter was. And the board would still have the authority whether or not to hire this firm or hire a different firm. But this just provides the infrastructure that if we do want to work with this firm, that we've already got an agreement in place, and it just facilitates the process. I would say that over my 6 years with this organization, and I've found Mr. Noonan's knowledge of our business and our benefits practices very, very valuable. And so while there may be other firms out there, just his already considerable knowledge in who we are, how we operate, and our business rules is a very valuable asset to us at this point. Thank you.
One quick thing, sorry.
No.
I would just say, so typically, it would be great to have two firms on retainer, some kind of a pool, but given the rates, I just don't see, absent some deficiency for a particular matter, why you would ever deviate from using it based on the rates and the knowledge base. So I don't have a problem with the fact that we only have one firm available on retainer because of that.
Thank
So,
you, Brett.
just so-
And to comfort you maybe perhaps more is that we do have fiduciary counsel who also litigates. And so if there were a conflict or some reason otherwise, we do have someone that we have a very strong relationship to pull from. And then we could also, of course, look at the market if we needed to go further from that.
Thanks, Brett. That's really helpful. Appreciate it. Any other comments, Paul? No? We got a motion by Paul, second by Brett. Please vote.
With all votes in, Mr. Acting Chair, this motion passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. Johnny's next up for staff recommendation to amend the committee charter, investment committee charter, board policy regarding a disaster event communications policy, donations policy, fiduciary counsel policy, outside counsels consultants policy, and board process of selection of independent non-board members of the investment committee, and Division 9 of board rules, parens death benefits. Wow. Okay, Johnny, go.
Thanks, Chris. I don't have any prepared comments. I know I presented a short memo highlighting the substantive changes, and I also see the red lines, but I welcome any comments, any questions, any changes.
Comments? Brett?
I'll just say red lines are very much appreciated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I have comments on two of the policies,
Yes.
and I'm going to distill them. So I'm not going to provide all the comments I had made before. So I just had one comment on the communication policy. The current policy says if a news story contains clearly inaccurate information, an authorized SDCERS representative may contact the author of the publication responsible for the inaccuracy to request a correction. We talked a bit about this issue of our public image at the retreat last, February or something. And there was a desire by a number of the board members to be a little bit more out front when we were improperly referenced or there was inaccurate information in the press. And I'd like to suggest that we want to do this as a routine. In other words, when there is something materially wrong that is in the press, that we as a norm, go ahead and write a correction to whomever the press entity is, rather than just leave it out there as, yeah, we might do it. So I'm suggesting that we amend that language from may to shall normally. Okay, so in other words, it would read, if a news story contains clearly inaccurate information, an authorized SDCERS representative shall normally contact the author of the publication responsible for inaccuracy to request a correction. And that still gives some wiggle room, but I really want Jessica out there with that velvet hammer talking back and explaining where there was some sort of an error. So that's my suggestion there. Sorry about that. There's so much material.
I don't disagree with your point.
Yeah. In the communication policy, that is item, it's in the policy part, it's item 3B. Is it possible to put that up there or no? No. It's okay. Okay. Paul, comment on that one? Or do you want to look at it?
Absolutely. I find Chris's comments kind of in alignment with our current policy, and our current practices. And I really support being more explicit in our policies in that manner, if that helps everybody have alignment on this. So, yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, so I'll just make that part of the motion when we do this, and then, because I have a second comment, so go ahead.
Just talking a little bit about process. So when we get to our meeting tomorrow, this will all go on consent, but you're going to talk about each consent item. And so when we get to this item tomorrow, you'll say the board, say you approve all of these. The board approved this with the following 2 amendments in the policies. And so you don't really need to pull it for a separate vote. We just talk about it as the item as part of consent.
Okay. Is that okay with it? Okay, thanks. And the other question was, I wanted to understand the amendments you're making to the fiduciary council policy. And the reason that I bring this up is that I see the fiduciary council's role as being this, I don't want to say fiercely, but very independent entity coming to the board and saying, I think you should do things thus because, and that's why you hired me, because I'm fiduciary counsel. So under the current language, it essentially, I don't want to say creates a firewall, but it creates a separation. And the way you have it written now essentially asks the fiduciary council to first come to the CEO and general counsel and convey to you her opinions before coming to the board. And I'm trying to understand why, because it seems like that there's a little break there in that separation of powers, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Thank you for the comment, Chris. So I sent Ashley Dunning, our current fiduciary counsel, this policy and asked her to review it and give any comments that she had. and she provided a paraphrased version of what you're seeing today. And she was concerned with paragraph 3, bullet item that you're talking about, that she was somehow responsible for reviewing all the material on the agenda, saying I need to highlight everything, and asking our fiduciary counsel to review 1,500 pages of documents was perhaps too heavy of a burden. I'm putting words in her mouth. And so she wanted to say, well, if I see something, I'll bring it to your attention unless you tell me to look specifically at it. And then I can talk to, and I'll quote here, then after consultation with the general counsel, CCO, CEO, committee chair, or board president as appropriate, provide comment on the fiduciary counsel. So, Chris, I don't think it's necessarily coming directly to general counsel or Greg. It can go to the board as necessary, as she deems appropriate. And so I hope you don't see it as a filter through staff. But without a doubt, I do this 40 plus hours a week, and so I'm available, and we do talk about things considerably. So I do think I'm a good conduit versus, let's say, asking our current president to have all the conversations with Ashley Dunning that I otherwise would have. So if you feel we should change it and maybe make that distinction, you think that's appropriate, that's fine. But I do think that your fiduciary counsel recognizes that her duty is to SDCERS and speak to the board and as your president as the highest authority. But oftentimes it would be appropriate to speak to staff to make sure we're on the same course here.
Would it be helpful to reorder those? I mean, you know, when you talk about, it says after consultation with the board president or committee chair or the CEO or the chief compliance officer or general counsel, that changes the tone of it. You know, it makes it more board facing than staff facing. And I agree with Johnny. This was not an edit that was put forth by staff to fiduciary counsel. This was really fiduciary counsel looking at our policy and saying, hey, I recommend these changes. So
Yeah, sounds good. So how would you reorder it then?
then after consultation with the board president, committee chair, CEO, CCO, or general counsel, provide comment and guidance to the board on fiduciary duty.
Okay.
It's basically saying the same thing, but by putting, when I write these things, I always like to try to put the board first. That sets the tone. It's part of communication. And so people understand in the order of magnitude, the board's most important. And then, you know, and it really is, as Johnny said, up to fiduciary counsel what communication channel she picks.
Sounds okay to me. Yeah, I think it is not a bad thing if we have a situation in which the general counsel opines this way and the fiduciary counsel opines a different way. I mean, that's essentially, you know, you're asking for a fresh or different look at things sometimes, and that's okay. And then the board can decide which one they want to go with. So, but I'm fine with what you just suggested.
And here, what we're really looking at is the fiduciary counsel looking at a board agenda material. And so, like today, we don't have fiduciary counsel before us because when they reviewed the committee work, they did not see the need to come advise the board. So this is really an opportunity if fiduciary counsel looks at our agenda material like, you know what, I'm going to show up, or I'm going to provide some written guidance to the board to help them with a business matter before them. So that's really what's we're talking about here. And I think what fiduciary counsel is, it says, before I just show up, I think I'd like to tell somebody I'm showing up. And so I'm going to reach out to the board president or the committee chair or general counsel or the CEO or the chief compliance officer.
Great. So with those, any other comments? With those minor changes, could I have a motion, please? And any other comments? Please vote.
With all votes in, Mr. Acting Chair, this motion passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Johnny. Okay, Natasha. All right, so Natasha Kalura, who has, I just want to give a little bit of a background here. So she's my former seatmate here, and I miss her very much. I think the last meeting she attended was a rather consequential meeting here. And so, anyway, she's no longer sitting up here. She's now going to be our Member Services Director, right? But I just wanted to note that Natasha has worked at SeaWorld, the zoo, the City of San Diego twice, the Airport Authority, and she's twice been appointed to be a member of this board. So,
But I'm a lot younger than I look.
I said to Natasha, I hope this is your last landing place and you're not recruited away from us next week, since you seem to be highly sought after. But we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, actually. So thank you, Chris.
You bet.
So again, I'm excited to be on this side of the dais. I just wanted to talk a little bit before I jump into the report. I wanted to acknowledge Victoria Fedeliso, who stepped in as the acting interim member services director. So in addition to her regular job, I believe Jessica did that at one point as well in the past. So thank you. Both of them, along with Sarah Levy, who's the retirement counselor supervisor, Andreas Molina, and the rest of the team, have really stepped up. And I know on the other side of the dais, we do hear about all the great work that they do. It's amazing watching them in action. So I'll talk a little bit more about our staff in just a moment. But you do have the staff report. I wanted to highlight a few things. As you know, our call center works very hard to keep the average call wait times down and all the other tasks and workflows completed in a timely manner. July was a tough month. We were down 2 staff members, and meant that we had a really high average wait time in July of about 9 minutes with little more than 1,200 calls. There was a lot of things happening in July as well. You know, there was the contribution rate change in coinciding with the increases in salary at the city. And so employees don't always understand why their paychecks aren't quite as high as they thought it would be. So there was a few calls happening with that. And then also insurance allowances change as well. So it was a busy month, and again, made challenging with staffing. The good news is that we are fully staffed now, and you really see the difference in a big way. So even though it does take several weeks to get up and running, we have 2 new additions. Lizbeth and Tomas have joined our 2 senior folks, Jennifer and Krista. They're all working as a well-oiled machine, and under Andreas Molina's leadership and Victoria's, our call times have gone down to 4 minutes and 30 seconds in August, with about 1,600 calls, and currently we're at 2 minutes and 44 seconds for 543 calls. So they are hitting it out of the park. So it's been actually really nice watching them in action. And as a former City of San Diego mayoral appointee and staff member, I'm getting a lot of calls from my former colleagues telling me how amazing the staff is and the counselors are. So it's really nice to hear, because, you know, they will call me, I'm sure, if they don't feel that way. But the calls I'm getting are very, very positive. So that's been great. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that it's not in the report, but there are upcoming board elections. Jessica manages that process for active fire safety and general member seats. They're coming up. Nominations are going to be opening in November 11th through December 11th. Voting goes live in January if there's a runoff, and the final results will be announced in February, with certification coming to the board for the March meeting. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know I have my team here if I can't answer them. So thank you.
Question? Couple questions. I noticed that you ended up with a call center logjam because of an email that went out to a bunch of people, and they all responded as soon as they got the email. I can't remember what the issue was. Do you recall what I'm talking about? It's in your report somewhere, but
You're talking about the contribution rates?
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, was the contribution rate. So when that changed, it also coincided with the salary increase that employees received. So, and there is a lag, obviously, in when this shows up in their paychecks. So there's always questions of, why does this look this way to me? Why am I getting less money? So it's just one of those things that occurs when it coincides with a salary increase.
Okay. And there's no way to sort of stagger that in some way so that you don't get everybody to respond at the same moment?
Anything is possible, but under the normal flow of business, every 3 years, we look at the actuarial assumptions and methodologies, and the actuary makes recommendations on changing different assumptions, and sometimes those impact the members' rates. And this last time around, there were some assumption changes made which increased most rates, decreased a few people's rates, member contribution rates into SDCERS, but our fiscal year starts on July 1. And so those rates become effective July 1st. Reflectively, the employer also makes a lump sum payment on July 1st. So that's pretty much the regular routine of that. Now, we could change that. That would be significant. To change that timing. The challenges that we have, the employer who, since I've been here, traditionally does cost of living or across the board salary adjustments either in January or July. And so once every few years, you might have an overlap of those dates. So I think we just kind of live with that.
So basically, everybody needs to get the information at the same time, and so maybe the next time, just Greg has a little extra time, have him come down to the call center that day, knowing that there's going to be a few more calls coming in. I'm sure he'd be happy to pitch in. The other question I had is, I noticed your discussion in there about translating some of the information into Spanish.
Yes.
And I was just interested to know do we have a sense of what percentage of our membership has Spanish as I guess you would say, primary language? I mean, what's your thought process there?
I actually will ask the team if they can come up and, do we have any information on that? Okay, we don't have a percentage. We do have a lot of Spanish-speaking members, so that is something that I've noticed just even my past month, the folks coming in to talk to the front desk. So we do have folks that their preference is to speak, their first language is Spanish. The actual percentage, I don't know if we have that, but I'm happy to look into that for you.
No, I don't need the specifics. I was just sort of trying to understand the motivation, because I'm assuming that most city employees anyway are expected to communicate in English on the job, and so I was wondering, what was going on. That's all.
Just to add some additional information there, we currently provide additional compensation to employees for having bilingual skills, and it is quite regularly that I'll be walking by the call center or listening to a counseling appointment, and it's happening in Spanish.
Yes.
So what we're really trying to do is that, if we have this amount of requests for Spanish-speaking support, maybe we can actually augment that with some translated documents to help out the team.
And the good news, Chris, is with our Google Analytics, I see Norma here as well, we look at how often people are clicking on certain videos or content, so we'll be able to track to see if those are being utilized,
Right.
to see if that's something that we should continue to increase that effort.
Thank you so much.
Comment?
No other,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Natasha, super happy to have you
Thank you.
with SDCERS, and I hope you practice saying no to any other requests for you. You stay
Thank
where
you.
you are for a long time. Thank you. Couple things, notes I took down here. When contributions go up, it's helpful for the members to know the why. Sometimes they think, oh, we got a pay raise, so our contributions go up, and it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And then they're also put at ease knowing that the normal costs for the city, as far as contributions go up equally. So they realize that, okay, this is the normal cost,
Right.
and it's shared between the members and the
Yeah,
city.
That's a good point.
So just that education really
Sure.
just gives them more clarity.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. No other comments? Motion, please? Oh, we don't need one for the report, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Move on to
Thanks very much, Natasha. So let's see. Sandra Clausen, our Benefits Administration Director, is unable to be here with us today, so we're lucky to have Monty Pareto here. And Monty, I have to tell you that somebody provided me some backup information here saying that you are a well-respected, long-serving subject matter expert on the team. So thanks for all of that. And
I have been with SDCERS for 24 years, so.
okay, so I guess you know where the bodies are buried, I guess.
Yeah, yes, that's true.
All right, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Monty Preto. I'm a program coordinator in the Benefits Administration Division. You have your materials, Sandra's, you have in your materials Sandra's Benefits Administration and members owning in excess of $10,000 reports. And I wanted to provide a quick update since the reports are written. The Port Plan Amendment, I am pleased to report that Benefits Administration continues to collaborate with our partners at the Port to implement the recently approved planned amendments. The plan amendment eliminated the 5-year waiting period for SDCERS membership starting on September 20th. Our Benefits Administration software system, IRIS, has been successfully updated to accommodate new members prior to the expiration of their waiting period. We are excited to welcome over 100 new members to SDCERS and eagerly anticipate their enrollment. And it wouldn't be an update if we didn't talk about Prop B. Effective September 9th, all active City Police Officer Association members in the Prop B Police Tier 5 plan were transitioned to the Police Tier 4 plan. This unwinds the Prop B Police Tier 4 and gives all active former Prop B POA members the benefits they would have had if Prop B had never existed. BA continues to collaborate with our city and Sagitech business partners to facilitate the required adjustments resulting from this conversion. Members can expect to see these updates reflected on the SDCERS member portal in mid-October. And lastly, on the members owning in excess of the $10,000 report, we were able to resolve Linda Lowe's $22,000 overpayment, with the estate taking responsibility for that overpayment. Thank you for your time today. This concludes my updates, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions?
One silly comment that you have someone whose job is death desk analyst. Rosa,
Yes.
you have a death desk
Yeah, she's the
analyst.
primary person that processes all member deaths. Yeah.
Sure, that's what she wanted to be when she grew up.
So,
Death desk analyst.
so Brett, if you have any good thoughts on how to rename that, because that is something that we all just kind of like, can't we find a better title? But thank you. We value Rosa tremendously.
Absolutely, she
It's
does a great
it's a
job.
very tough assignment.
It is.
Yeah, and I would just comment that I did talk to Sandra because I read the report and about the police Prop B stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I had a back and forth, and she provided me as much information as she could, and I still don't understand it. But it's okay, because you guys do, and I guess it's getting sorted out. So
Yeah,
thank
it's
you
been-
very much.
It's been fairly complex correction, but we've been working closely with the city, so it's working out. It's going to go smoothly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Okay, let's see. Michelle's back up here for the IT division report.
Good morning again. So within your board materials is the IT status report, as well as detailed updates on our strategic plan projects. One item not included in that update that we recently completed was the implementation of a new phishing software. At our July meeting, we had our security vendor come and present the results of our annual penetration testing. And within that presentation, they shared that a significant number of company incidents are a result of people clicking on on links in emails or attachments in emails. It highlights the importance of a training program and a strong training program, and that we continue to educate staff. We manage endpoint security on email to block potential malware, but the bad actors are getting smarter and more sophisticated. So keeping everybody trained and alert is an important piece of that security framework. So what this phishing software does is it uses a predefined schedule and the population of people that we enter into the system, and it creates simulated phishing attacks. And we can monitor behavior. We can see people's click. We can see if they open the email, delete the email, flag it as a potential phishing. Helps our system get smarter at the endpoint, but it also gives us places where we can focus some of our training needs. So with the implementation of this new software, we had a baseline test this week. So everybody who has an email in the SDCERS domain got a baseline phishing attack email that was initiated by the IT team. And what we wanted to do is monitor behavior and use that as a starting point or baseline to help improve and strengthen security awareness across the organization. So here's the results. Greg doesn't even have these yet. 72 emails went out, and that included staff and board members and consultants or contractors that all have emails. Of those, 7 failed. So might sound bad, actually not too bad. That makes our risk rate about 10% with a success rate of 90%. For other government agencies with the similar size, their risk rate is 28%. So when you fare across other government comparable sizes, we're doing very well. But this does highlight where we can do some more training and educating staff. This will be a continuous process. We are going to do this on a regular basis, so I hope to give you guys some further updates throughout the year. And with that, I conclude my updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to this or anything in the board material.
I still have my email unopened. I was going to show you.
And what are you going to do with it when you do open it?
What do you suggest?
Delete.
it. Well, I wasn't going to open it, certainly. Yeah.
I think it just highlights the importance that we all have to just be very careful with email. It's not just something to take lightly. You should scrutinize it because there's always potential of risk.
I will say that we, the board members, get a lot of information from outside entities who are doing business with SDCERS or ostensibly various reports and all the rest of it. And it becomes a little confusing because there are so many emails from outside entities. The ones from inside are a little bit easier to figure out, I guess. Is there a possibility with the 365 migration that this gets any better, or is it basically going to be the same scenario?
I think it's always going to exist. I think you always have to be aware. There's a big difference between phishing and spam. So people do confuse the two, and we do get alerts when people flag spam as phishing emails. But I'd rather them be cautious and flag it than not flag it. I don't know if 365 will be different. They do have tools that will potentially replace what our endpoint tools do, but the function of them are all very similar. Some of these are using, artificial intelligence so that they are identifying algorithms. So if you are able to flag it as phishing, it's using some algorithm within the email to make the endpoint system smarter so that it can better filter. But no solution is going to be perfect, and that's why the education of staff is important.
On the thank you. On the 365 migration, will that allow someone with multiple accounts with the city to have a combined inbox once that happens? The reason I ask is I know that some board members who are active city employees note that they have 2 addresses with the city, one as the SDCERS board member and one as whatever their title is, and going over and checking the other one take some work, logging out, logging in, whatever it may be. Will that be able to be consolidated somehow?
Simple answer is no. We're
Okay.
two separate domains. There's two separate accounts, and we administer security based on that account. So the city of San Diego would administer their Active Directory system and administer security based on those accounts, and then we have a distinctly different domain and administer security on our side. So they're two different environments that can't be combined. What is combined is the alias. So if you use an SDCERS domain and you email mwegner@sdcers.org, and you also email mwegner@sandiego.gov, it's both going to come to the same inbox.
Okay.
But combining it, if I had a city account and an SDCERS account, those are two distinctly different domains.
Okay. And then last question is on the .gov thing. I understand that was a government mandate or whatever. Is there a reason not to migrate sooner to that, or is that just a workload issue?
There could be opportunity. I think in November, we're going to start having some discussions, planning out the action plan. At the time that they came through, we weren't quite sure how it would roll out, what the time would be for them to approve our domain. So just recently, we did have CISA approve our request for sdcers.gov. From that point, we can now start working with member services and the business to put together like a promotion. The heavy lifting is really on the operations to transfer publications and outreach. On the technical side, it kind of pairs in perfectly with our migration into 365 because we can use the .gov as our primary domain and then use sdcers.org as an alias. But
I believe it's in January of 2029 is the state of California. That's when you have to get it all done. I believe we're going to transfer well in advance of that. But the things that we're balancing is Michelle's put together a very comprehensive, Michelle and her team, not just Michelle. Michelle and her team and lots of resources have put together a very in-depth 4-year IT strategic plan. And as that unfolds, there'll be a slot to perform the migration. And she's right, then we have the ripple effect of updating the website, updating various publications and whatnot, which is more operational. But we're really just going to be meeting and trying to say what is the best time to do that. So in my comments tomorrow, I'll be giving a shout out to Norma Frank from our IT team who went toe-to-toe with Homeland Security to get our .gov address because that was a battle in itself. So
yep.
Thank you,
They
Norma.
originally denied it, and she was able to resubmit for reconsideration and got it approved.
They're a tough crowd,
They
aren't
are.
they? Yeah, thank you very much. And I have to say, looking at your report, just extraordinary work being done by your team. So thank you.
Thank you. They
Appreciate
work
it.
hard, and I appreciate that.
Oh, and you too, not just the team.
Thank you, Chris.
Next up is Johnny with the Legal Division report.
Hi, everyone. I normally don't give a report, but I did want to highlight our talks with city management to discuss coordinating, implementing the ability for city safety and general members to pay additional contributions to improve their benefit when they retire. So I think if I could put my mind in theirs, it was something that wasn't on their radar, given it's a very old statute. So they said they had to meet with the city attorney's office to talk about how they would do this, meet with risk management, meet with other people at the city to figure out what they want to do with this, if the city wants to keep the benefit, how they would keep it, maintain it, get rid of it, et cetera. So it is in the city's court. And so I have calendared to follow up with them, Greg and I do. And so hopefully we'll have something back from the city. Any questions about that or my report?
Johnny, just from a compliance perspective, in as much as it is part of the plan, how long can we delay without just saying, hey, this is the law, you guys passed it, and we're going to implement it?
It's a good question. So I think if a member were to say, I want to do this now, we would accept that and figure out how to implement that given what the current statutes say. I think as an administrator, we want to do it within a reasonable amount of time to make sure that the member isn't injured by any delay, but I don't really have a hard, fast rule about how long something should take.
I just think, I'm just concerned that, this is a benefit that is supposed to be offered to the members that
Sure.
we haven't been offering. Now we're aware of the issue. I would hate to have the city's delay in response ending up blowing up in our face as, well, you guys didn't do what this says you're supposed to do. So I guess my only thought process is that we ought to give them some sort of a deadline at some point. If it looks like they're not going to move on this, give them a deadline at some point and say, well, unless you act by such and such a date, we're going to have to offer this because we're required to under your municipal code.
You mind if I jump in? We've talked about this before. I don't remember if it was the board meeting or a committee meeting, but I respectfully disagree with Mr. Brewster's summation of the municipal code. I believe it's permissive, not mandatory. But with that said, I still think we need to come to a conclusion of, do we administer this program, yes or no? So I really just want to put that thought process out there. Is I don't think we are not in compliance. I don't think we have litigation risk with regards to additional contributions. But I think it is very wise to go to the plan sponsor to say, do you want us to do additional contribution program, yes or no? And if so, let's move forward together, because the whole intent of SDCERS is to help the plan sponsor attract and retain employees. And so going back to the plan sponsor on their plan design is, would this be valuable to you, yes or no? Should we do this? And if so, we'll put the program together. If not, then please be explicit. And if you really don't like it, then take it out of the municipal code. Again, these additional contributions, my understanding, were put into the retirement plan before the city put together defined contribution plans. So it was a tool to allow people to save more for retirement. The city's implemented a lot of other different avenues for employees to actually save for retirement. So it's really going back to the city to say, how do you want to attract and retain employees? Is this a valuable tool for you, yes or no? How would you like to move forward? But again, sorry for being long-winded here, but I believe the statutes read as permissive, where it says the Board of Retirement may implement. So I don't think it's as cut and dried as Mr. Brewster says.
As I may think, yes. So I would say that it's a very healthy thing in an environment like this for us to disagree with each other.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? Thank you very much, Johnny. Appreciate it. Let's see, Ted, I think you're up with the Finance Division report. Yes?
No. Actually, none of those. But you can ask them about it.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Ted.
Thank you.
The CEO advises that you don't have to be sitting there if you don't want to be.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, so
don't mind.
you can retreat to the audience if
Well,
you like.
if you have a question for me, Chris.
Oh, anybody have any questions on these issues? Okay, thanks, Ted.
Wow.
That was easy. It sounded rough, but I guess it's not going to be. Let's see. I think we already covered the members owing in excess of $10,000, and vendor fees in excess of $50,000. Was that something you were going to talk about, Johnny?
I didn't plan on it.
Okay, well, don't worry about it then. Anybody have any questions about that? And the travel and training costs annual report, that was great. I really enjoyed that. Did you guys read that?
Of course they did.
I would.
Members read their entire packages.
I would just say that what I learned from that is it's very expensive to send your kids to Stanford. But anyway, since I don't have kids, it's not going to cost me a dime, so thank you. All right, next up is, I guess, questions and comments from the chair, which I do not have, board members and staff. Greg, I have to believe you must have some comments.
Absolutely, because Chris, I just really wanted to thank you for stepping up and being our acting chair and doing a very good, commendable job. So thank you, Chris, I appreciate you. And again, I'd like to thank Brett for being here today so that we could hold this meeting, and I really appreciate your additional service and time away from your regular duties, no matter how inconvenient it was today. So, highlight of my day.
Thanks, it was my pleasure. I'm sure I won't be asked back, but I gave it my best shot. Okay, so closed session, we have no closed session, is that right, Johnny?
That's correct. We don't have any closed session.
And so I guess we won't have a closed session report.
Correct.
Anything else for the good of the cause? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Good job, Chris.